right. Hello, everyone. Brian Gockel here, Weather Service Office of Observations. Welcome to the Satellite Book Club Seminar Series number 228. Today's presentation is the importance of early detection of fire weather support and the impact on response in rural communities. Our presenter today is Rebecca Muessle, lead and incident meteorologist from WFO Portland, Oregon. And our facilitator today is Mike Stavish, the Science Operations Officer, also from WFO Medford, actually, WFO Medford, Oregon. Just a few reminders before we get underway. Session's being recorded. For the Privacy Act guidelines, please keep your microphone muted and webcam all throughout the session as we do record these. Please see the pinned message in the chat for more information. As usual, the Q&A session will be at the end of the presentation, and we encourage all attendees to post your questions in the chat room, and we'll field them from there. If you are logged in under an alias account, please sign in with your full name and specify your full name when asking a question in the chat. We welcome future presenters. Contact the Tower West team, and they will or have posted a link, there it is, in the chat, an easy sign-up sheet. We welcome future presenters and facilitators. Training team can help create training materials. Contact Ross Van Til for information and questions about that if you have any. Thanks as always to the OCLO, Geo and Leo programs, our facilitators, presenters, and participants. Before we get started with Rebecca's talk, just a few words about her background. Rebecca Muessle is a lead meteorologist in IMET out of NWS Portland, Oregon. Her passion for weather and fire brought her to the Weather Service in 2017, and she has since served in both the Anchorage, Alaska, and Portland WFOs. She has served on numerous wildfire missions in Washington, Oregon, California, and has provided weather support on the very rural St. Paul Island in Alaska. Rebecca, welcome to the Satellite Book Club.
Thank you so much for having me. So yes, today we will be discussing the importance of early detection fire weather support and the impact on response in rural communities. And this is going to be a little bit of a twist because we're going to be integrating satellite and remote sensing into an operational standpoint. Next. So before we really dive in, I want to paint the picture of why this work is so important. So while I've been working out in the field on wildfires, a lot of our rural forestry partners have expressed a critical need for rapid notification of emerging incidences and that weather information. Now, our current lead time from fire ignition to its reporting to that fire response is significantly delayed. Right now, we rely on our fire partners to request that information. Especially in our rural communities, resources are incredibly limited, especially for that initial response. And then research does show that climate change will make the environment more susceptible to wildfire and cause the season to be longer and more active. Next. So Oregon itself, in the vulnerability analysis, 8% of the state's population is considered vulnerable. And 87% of those people say that wildfires have a negative impact on their lives. And respondents state that fires limit transportation of goods and resources in and out of their communities. Next. Some societal impacts on resources is that in our rural communities, resources are scarce. A lot of our rural fire districts have a part-time fire chief and a volunteer force, maybe 2 people. In the state of Oregon especially, we have had grants from the state fire marshal to provide extra funding for 24-hour coverage during the summer. But again, when it comes to initial attack, especially early in the season, staffing is incredibly low. So for example, in 2020, we had a large swath of wildfires here in Western Oregon. And those rural districts were focused on putting out those fires, but their own homes were being decimated. And it can take hours to days to receive state or federal funding, air or ground support in order for that initial attack to turn into a full-scale response. Next slide, please. So let's dive into some of our operational tools. Next. So we have had discussions on the Satellite Book Club about the next generation fire system, and this dashboard has been critical for our early detection and early notification of wildfires. So for those who may not be as familiar with it, this is a dashboard that we have here in the Portland operations office up on our big satellite or our big situational display that alerts us when we have a fire detection ongoing in our CWA. Next. So this is an example of what that satellite imagery looks like. When we get that hotspot detection, we will get an alert on that dashboard. We can then go and actually look at that satellite imagery where we can receive the latitude, longitude, information about it. The temperature is hot enough that it's a potential wildfire, or it's a known kind of industrial area. For example, we have a smelting plant here in our CWA that we know that's always going to be a hotspot. So from there, we can gather that latitude and longitude and start to take action. Next slide. This is an example just of this last January that we had. So we were noticing on that NGFS a hotspot detection in Clackamas County. And so we then were able to look at that on our Google map utilizing that latitude, longitude, and notice that it was in an area that was a potentially logged land. So we could have a lot of dead and down debris, burn piles, etc. And then we actually received this picture from a former staff member saying, hey, I'm seeing a smoke plume. Next slide, please. So when we have that latitude, longitude, we then can go to our GIS mapping system and map it to identify which partner that fire essentially belongs to. In this case, it was a Oregon Department of Forestry land it was in the Santiam district of that department. So then we were able to call them and notify and say, hey, by the way, we're seeing this hotspot detection in our satellite imagery. Is it a fire that you're aware of? They were not. They did not know that that fire had existed at that point. So then they were able to send out their observers, and they realized that it was an unauthorized large-scale burn mission that a private industry was doing. Next slide, please. So in addition to that satellite imagery, one of the things that we've had the opportunity to do is pair with our private industries and utilizing artificial intelligence camera detection to identify those smoke plumes. So this is specifically designed AI software to detect smoke plumes of any kind and provide advanced notice via text message to fire managers and to private industry. And now we here at our office receive these notifications as well. These can be a trigger to look maybe a little bit further. We get this email and it says, hey, we detected a smoke plume in your area. Now let's go dive into the satellite. Let's look at the radar. Let's see if we're detecting any smoke. Let's start calling partners, whatever it might be. This is a secondary tool as a kind of a first look there. Currently, like I said, it is a private industry resource only, but through partnerships, we can start to develop those relationships to tap into those resources. So this here on the right-hand side of your screen is an example of a camera picture from Pano AI. And so I want you to really closely look at this camera and try to identify the smoke plume. And then if we click again on the slide, you can zoom in, and that is what the AI camera detected, that small thing. And that ended up being an industrial fire in a rural community that then had to have large scale response, and they were responding to it for days. And we ended up doing spot weather forecasts for it for about a week. Next slide, please. Another system for our federal-based partners is our Wildcat system. So when they're notified of some kind of fire, smoke detection, etc., it will then be entered into the Wildcat system. We have set up that anytime a fire is entered into one of our federal districts that covers our forecast area, we are then notified via an email that looks like this with the latitude, longitude. From there, we can use that latitude, longitude, determine our fire weather partner, create that spot forecast, forecast and get it to them incredibly rapidly before we're even notified of it. While it is a policy and a guidance in their response, unfortunately, not all people are aware of our SPOT program or how to do it. It can be kind of convoluted. So this is taking that component out of it. We're able to get that information rapidly to those partners. Next slide, please. We then also can be linked into our 911 CAD system. This is the computer-aided dispatch system that our 911 operators use. We're currently in the testing phase of seeing how this can be used for that initial response. It can go both ways. So we are then notified via this system, hey, we have a fire or a hazmat incident. We then can go in to our satellite imagery radar, start to gather more data, maybe learn more about the topography in the area. We then can develop and create that spot weather forecast for them and send it to them immediately. So often, they don't have the resources to ask for weather information. And so instead, we can provide that more quickly so that they have those information for initial response. And because we're in rural communities, it makes the information available to all because they're able to communicate via radio. I don't know about you, but when I go camping, I don't necessarily have the best cell phone service or internet service. So how we can communicate this information to those rural communities where resources, where connectivity is low and they have low bandwidth, that's going to be a major player in initial attack. Next slide, please. So we're going to dive into an example of how these tools can be leveraged for that emergency response. Next slide, please. So we're going to look at the Falls Fire. This was a fire I was deployed to this last year. So at 23:36 Pacific time on July 9th, our NGFS satellite imagery detected a hotspot. Now that is small on that satellite and it is nighttime. So you don't have people out and about. There's no aircraft flying for notification, but the satellite imagery did detect that irregular heat signature. Next. Then at 7:55 a.m. on the 10th, that's when that fire was entered into Wildcat. So it was identified, and then there became joint response from Oregon Department of Forestry and the U.S. Forest Service. So if we look at that timing, that's about 9 hours of lead time we would have just from the satellite detection to when it was entered into our federal database. Next, please. Now, unfortunately, a spot weather forecast was not requested for weather information for this fire until 21:33 on July 10th. That fire at that point was already 250 acres and there was a red flag warning at the time. So we had dry, windy, unstable conditions. And next, there was a 22-hour delay in weather information. Next slide, please. Now, 22 hours, when we think about larger scale weather systems, 22 hours isn't necessarily a make or break. But when it comes to wildfire, we have what's called the wildfire triangle, where it's fuels, terrain, and weather. And in initial attack, the only thing that changes is weather. So getting that weather information in that first 22 hours could have helped them leverage what resources and where they were going to put them. And that satellite detection, we can utilize that, contact them, get them that weather information. Because just 3 days later, we had a pyrocumulonimbus develop over that fire, and it had spread to 55,000 acres. Next slide, please. So the repercussions of this fire were vast. Now, granted, it was happening at a time where resources were low nationwide for fire support, which is a component we have to think about, but it was in the Malheur National Forest. They had issued area closures, so a lot of the forest was closed. Air quality was hazardous. almost every single day. And so we were having really large impacts to the community, including tribal, and then there were cultural concerns. A lot of this area is rural free range lands. So the cattle and other livestock are able to just kind of roam around the forest and graze as needed. And so it would take hours on foot to gather that cattle. So with more ample lead time, you have more ample response time. And there were highway closures. Now on this graph, this is an evacuation map, and I want to draw your attention there to the lower right-hand corner, right on the edge of the yellow and the green. Next. This is the site of the Burns Paiute tribe, one of their reservation sites, and their evacuation zone for the reservation was still in the evacuation. We had native historical sites that were at risk of fire damage, which included traditional fishing grounds, and that provides significant food for the tribe. Air quality was a major issue, especially for the community elders. They didn't have the resources. Again, the tribal evacuation centers were threatened and limited, and then communication flow to the tribe itself was hindered. Next. So why is this important? I just talked a lot about the tools we have and what we can use to leverage them. But rapid fire weather information improves tactical decisions, and that then leads to protection of life and reduction of fire-related injuries. That's a major role and part of our motto at the National Weather Service. It reduces property damage. We limit smoke production, thus mitigating air quality issues and smoke inhalation issues. We can maintain lines of open transportation, and then it reduces the stress on local resources so that they can respond to other incidences. So often the fire department is also your emergency response, police, they might be your ambulance drivers, and the fire chiefs are also the anesthesiologists in the hospitals. So when we can reduce the amount of local response needed because we've captured it faster, we put less strain on the community. Next slide, please. So in summary, with proactive and rapid weather forecast, decision makers can respond and protect their communities with more awareness of the weather changes that will impact their operations. And it will allow first responders to make critical tactical decisions, which help people respond quickly to the emerging incident, protect their homes, livelihood, and culture. Next. And we do that in the following ways. One, mutual notification of the incident, whether it's through 911, Wildcat, or our detection via satellites. Then it's that weather response. We either alert that agency to the emerging threat with a spot weather forecast in hand so that there is zero lead time. And then we disseminate that weather forecast to the appropriate partners via necessary channels that allow accessibility with low bandwidth. And then we're always monitoring for changes and communicating that. Are we starting to see via radar satellite pyrocumulonimbus developing? Are we seeing towering cumulus? Are we seeing a smoke column that's beginning to collapse? We can identify all of that. And there is so much work being done to help us provide better decision support for those communities in the world of remote sensing. I know I'm really excited about it, and to use that while I'm out deployed. And that progress is constantly evolving. So with that, I know that I went kind of quickly there, so I will take any questions. And here's my email address if you have any direct questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So at this point, we're going to move into questions just in a minute, but we've got a few things to talk about here. Real quick, before we get there, you can go ahead and change your layout, if you will, if you'd like to make things a little bit more user-friendly for this portion of the call for you. Check out the monitor there and see what Kashad is sharing you, and you could change some settings if you'd like. Emily is also going to post a survey link in the chat. I think that might already be in there. And if you would, please give feedback to that survey. The book club would love to hear that so they can make things better in the future. Please, for all participants, please post your questions in the chat log here within the call. You can also do that in the chat room. I believe we have another chat room that you can post questions to, or raise your hand to indicate you would like to ask a verbal question, and I'll get to you. Next week, we will have Justin from the University of Oklahoma. He will discuss enhancements to automated frontal boundary predictions with geostationary satellite imagery and high-resolution NWP. So please join us on March 27th for that. And contact Tower S. Questions and comments. They'd love to hear your feedback. Kashad and Emily do a terrific job, and would love to hear from you. So now we'll move to the Q&A session. I see some questions lining up in here, and we'll move directly ahead. Thank you again, Rebecca. I see you're standing by. I see one question in here from Stephen Bodnar. Are the emails from Pano coming directly from them or filtered through a core partner?
Thanks for that question, Stephen. So we have worked directly with our one of our power companies actually to work and leverage that relationship to connect with Pano AI. So we actually get those emails from Pano, and we've identified the counties in which we cover in our forecast area. So we get the email, and when you have a designated user, so you get one designated user, in this case, it's our Sioux, and we can actually log in and see all of the cameras too if we want more. One of the challenges, we get a lot of alerts, especially during prescribed season. So we try to navigate that. But yes, they come directly from Pano.
Thank you, Rebecca. Let me ask you a question here. This presentation is focused on rural communities. Do you have any examples of how it's used in an urban environment, and what are some caveats to the process that you have to train people to be aware of?
Yes, so in our urban environment, it's been incredibly useful. So this last summer, we had a large-scale industrial fire on an island in Portland that is the home of a lot of hazardous waste. And so we were able to detect the fire on our satellite imagery and then confirm that through other sources, that then we were able to provide that spot forecast not only for fire, but also for our emergency managers. And our emergency manager didn't even think about it at that point, but they were able to use that weather information in a high split model run to see if they actually had to worry about any evacuation potential because of the hazardous material. So in an urban environment, that's super helpful. Some of the caveats that we have to look for though, and I kind of mentioned it a little bit, are things like smelting plants, industrial locations that are always producing enhanced heat and heat signatures. We also have to be cautious about prescribed burns and notification of our partners to prescribe burns, because most of the time they're already aware of that. But like I said, in January, we had one, which is not a normal time frame to have any kind of a fire scenario.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Heath, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Hi, Rebecca.
Hey.
Wonderful stuff here. Obviously, we're moving policy towards folks coming online and offering this service. Curious, maybe I missed it. Do you have automated spots attached to any of these alerts? Has the thought been there? Maybe I missed it. And then the second part of my question is, how is the communication mapped out? Is it within your AOP? Is it found within your Oregon comms plan or Washington comm plan? Is it tied to a state actual comms plan? So curious about the comms plan and ideas for auto spots.
Yes, so auto spots would be fantastic. Unfortunately, we have not had the opportunity to explore that at this point. So essentially what we've had to do is, because we get that latitude, longitude, we're able to produce that spot forecast fairly quickly. When we are working with our partners and discussing this, we let them know that it is going to be what we consider initial attack spot forecast. So it's going to be fairly automated. We'll have a short little discussion. So if you're not familiar with the spot forecasts, you have a discussion section, and then it's broken out kind of like one of our traditional products. So the quick headlines, quick and dirty headlines for the discussion, and then almost fully automated for the other portions, because we're able to get that done faster from initial alert of that fire to actually actively sending the spot. It's less than 10 minutes once we have that set in place. As far as communication goes, this is in its infancy at this point. So it has been a lot of just boots on the ground communicating with our partners. We've started with our state and federal partners, and the service has been incredibly well received. So at this point, it is in our AOP that we are testing, in the testing phase of this, and that if people want to be involved or have questions, they can connect with us. Again, it's pretty rural, but the response has been fantastic, and we are testing it now with that 911 CAD system with one of our local counties that has a really solid urban to rural interface.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Heath.
Thanks, Heath, for that question. It looks like Scott posted the NGFS dashboard link in there that he has. Rebecca, I also had a question with regard to that and the WildCAD. You also mentioned Pano AI, and you talked about the 911 CAD system. Is there a clearinghouse place where forecasters can go and management can go to absorb all this at once?
Yeah. So right now, we have not created like a single-handed document, but that would be something that I can absolutely create, especially with the resources that are publicly available, like the WildCAD. It is a openly sourced website, and one of our forecasters, he's awesome, created code to automatically ingest that. I think he created it in like 10 minutes. So it is available. And then for the Pano AI, what's tricky about that is you do have to develop that relationship. So it's communicating with our partners and really developing that. But a lot of our core partners are starting to get that service, including our fire districts. And then the 911 CAD system component, some of our cohorts in Eastern region have put together a document that is on the NWS Insider page. So they have a whole talk on that. But I'm happy to kind of put it all together in a nice little package as well for folks if they're interested in getting that established.
Thanks. Yeah, I know I am. So maybe I'll bug you soon on that one.
Absolutely. And kind of to tie into Heath's conversation too, once we're able to kind of iron out the kinks here locally, I would love to see it expanded over the state. So Mike, I'll be hitting you up in Medford,
Yeah.
so that we can be kind of a statewide program.
Okay. All right, thank you. It looks like we have another question in the chat from Benjamin. Have you utilized NGFS or other detection data while serving as an IMET on an incident to augment the daily infrared flights?
Oh, yeah.
For instance, to see real-time increases in fire behavior or big runs or spotting?
Absolutely. So because of the fire detection, we're able to also see the heat signature, and there's a multitude of different satellite options within the NGFS. So I can see generally if it's starting to flare up, I can see when time of day wise, I'm noticing we're getting more active fire weather, which can help with trends. And then in the overnight hours, when maybe it's cloudy or we have, or I should say more so when resources are slim for the flights, the IR flights to map it, I'm able to use that to identify any new starts from lightning. So I did use that this last year and notice, hey, we have a new start waking up fresh in the morning when there haven't been eyes on the ground of, hey, you need to go to that spot or around that spot. So yeah, absolutely. As an IMET, it's been critical.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. I don't see any other hands up right now and or questions in the chat. We'll give people a little bit of time here to think about some things and see if you have any last ideas you want to contribute. Go ahead, Heath.
Hey, it's me again. I'm itching to ask everyone, maybe not everyone. I can't assume this, but the next step in this is translation to fire warnings.
Mm-hmm.
So are there any pressures? Everyone, not everyone, here I go again. Folks know what's happening in Oklahoma, in the plains, current paradigm. It becomes a lot more difficult, complex terrain, moving through assumed fire behavior spread calculations, which you can do a lot better in grass push fires, right? So are you getting any pressure to even go to the next step already?
I think most of our partners aren't really aware of those, especially when I think of our state and our local fire districts. They don't know about those yet. Federal partners, there might be. I have not necessarily received that, but I think you bring up some really solid concerns about that in some capacities with the terrain. So I haven't experienced that yet, other than me wanting to try them. But no, I haven't received that externally.
Great, thank you. I always like to gauge how far ahead the field is ahead of me. Let's just say that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ernie, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mike?
Very good.
And yeah, thanks, Rebecca. One of my first questions was going to be, do you utilize heads up from CoCoRaHS? But I looked at the map and saw that there aren't as many CoCoRaHS rain gauge people in your area as there are, say, in ours. And so that would be public outreach reporting and receiving heads up that there is a fire in our area. So a second question that comes to mind, because in Colorado, where I'm from, we experience the same types of things that you do, where you go into the mountains and you don't have cell reception. And so people can't receive warnings. And occasionally even the NOAA weather radio, that goes down. So you don't receive that type of thing. And alternatively, though, a lot of people don't understand some of the distinctions between, it's been really dry, so be real careful about your fires. So are there any, I guess another aspect of fire weather is, the public being aware and to try and report it some way. So are there ways to do more outreach in that respect? I know it's challenging when there are limited resources all around, but I find that when you have some honest discussions with people and you point out a few things, they're more open to it. So that's the question. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what a lot of it comes down to is getting those boots on the ground and building those relationships. I know for me, really establishing conversations with those rural fire departments. And it's been a little bit easier for me as I'm out in those communities. I can talk to the Detroit Fire District that covers only, 70 square miles, it might be. But definitely getting out there. I think a lot of our state and federal partners, actually, because they're more rural and they have those relationships, they do get the notifications pretty early. One of the other strategies for notifications that can be leveraged that I don't think we use as often is actually notification from aircraft flying over. So I've actually used collaboration with our airports saying, hey, if you see any flooding or get reports of it, can you let us know or send a message to the pilots? So that's another access, especially for those rural areas. But it is difficult. And so it takes going out and doing a lot of listening, I think, first is the big piece. And then talking about the easy steps that we can do.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Bernie, for your question. I wanted to point out here that Benjamin Hatch had posted the link to the American Meteorological Society paper that you can click and take a look at. Scott Lindstrom also asked a question here, Emily. How difficult is it to instruct partners on the mechanics of fire warnings, and how often do we have to repeat those instructions?
So when it comes to the fire warnings, we don't issue it. It's still kind of in the testing phase or a little bit of a more limited scope. But I will say, when it comes to our fire partners in general, a lot of them are long haulers. They've been there for a long time. And so luckily with that, kind of once you tell them once, it stays. But we can definitely educate them in any of the coursework we're talking about or teaching. We always do a pre-season meeting and training where we actually discuss any new red flag warning criteria, or, we've established our particularly dangerous situation, red flag warnings. And it's, again, just kind of taking every opportunity, but because we haven't established the fire warnings here yet, I have limited scope on how that is implemented and training on that.
Thanks, Rebecca. A couple more things I wanted to point out here. Please take a look at the write-ups that Scott posted a link to in the chat here on the SIMS page. And also Stephen Bodnar posted the link to the National Wildcat page there as well. So please take notice of those two things there. Julie said, Norman, I'm sorry. Julie says WFO Norman will be best to talk with about the fire warning, Scott.
Yep.
And Amarillo.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're kind of reaching a quiet period here. So why don't we move to wrap up here? Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you.
I think I'll pass things over to, who am I passing them to? Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, very much for facilitating the discussion today. And thanks to Rebecca for an informative and beneficial presentation, educational for me and surely for others. Rebecca, love how you pulled together and made use of these tools and utilities to provide a really specialized community tailored service. We thank you for a great presentation. As Mike let us know earlier, please join us 1 week from today on Thursday, March 27th, noon Eastern. Andrew Justin from the University of Oklahoma, and his topic will be enhancements to automated frontal boundary predictions with geostationary satellite imagery and high resolution NWP models. So come back a week from today for that. And for now, we'll wrap up today's seminar. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next week.